Hi everyone, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie.
Hello.
Together we are ThinkerThemer, and welcome to the second episode of 10, out of 10, where we rate 10 games on a 10-point scale based on our very subjective opinions. We are hoping to rate everything in our collection, and when we launched our first episode, we weren't expecting it to have quite such an overwhelming and warm reception.
Yeah, it appears that people are interested in this, in what we think about the games in our collection.
In board games, who knew?
Out of 10, specifically, like rating them.
Yeah, and so thank you to everybody who dropped in on the comments on the last video and just let us know what they thought of the series. Really helpful feedback. And one point of feedback that we had that was quite polarizing was we asked about the length of the video. The length of these videos are long. All of our content tends to be quite long form compared to other channels.
We tend to talk. We like to talk.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's why there's timestamps. So we did have kind of polarizing feedback on either the episodes being too long or too short. But the benefit of someone who thinks it's too long is you can skip through the timestamps.
Yeah.
But all the people who are like, please don't make it any shorter, obviously
sit through the whole thing.
They will sit through the whole thing. And, you know, if there's games that are particularly of interest to you, you please make use of the timestamps and skip forward to those, and we'll continue to do that. We will try to be more on point and less rambly with our thoughts.
I can't promise anything. I can't help myself.
I'll try.
Even when I try and don't ramble, don't go off in tangents. I can't.
We're doing it now.
Exactly. Case in point. Yeah.
So the length will probably stay the same because we have to be honest with ourselves. We're not very good at being succinct.
Yeah.
There were a few questions as well, and I'm just going to touch on the ones that came up multiple times. And so the first thing that I wanted to talk about is how many games do we actually have in our collection, and will this series go on forever at our rate of acquisition? And that is a very good question.
Fair question. I don't know if I have an answer for that myself.
We probably have about 300 games in our collection. It's been a while since we did some culling, and so that is obviously a lot of episodes. We are just going to keep working through our games. Yeah. At the moment, we haven't really thought about what to do with all of the filler games, so all the card games. So if you have any thoughts of that, or if you're keen to see some episodes where we do a lot of the smaller, lighter games in our collection, we've been trying to focus on more of the mid-weight
experiences.
Because there's a lot of those games in our collection that we haven't spoken to, like in our series Small Talk. It will just continue, and at some point we'll probably run out of things to talk about, or maybe not. But that was not really an answer. I have a question that came predominantly from my mum. Hi, Mum. Which was, what is the number that we need to hit in terms of our rating in order for a game to be culled out of our collection? I would say, roughly speaking, anything under 7 is probably...
It's at risk.
At risk of being culled.
Yeah.
Yes. But there are things that would be higher than 7 that I would also cull, and that's usually because there is a substitute in our collection that we prefer more. So even though it's a good game and we enjoy it, it's just not going to get the table time.
Yeah.
So that's why we haven't really put an exact number to the culling threshold.
Could there be a scenario where there's something that falls under that, so in the at risk, and we still keep it?
Only if... like our friends love it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, because there might be a game that is like we ourselves don't
We're just like,
love.
Every time they
it's
choose
not, like super high up, but it just gets requested so much.
I've actually thought of a couple immediately that it's just like you have this huge range on your shelves, and you bring people in and you're like, choose anything, and they choose the one game that they've played before that's just silly fun, and you're like, oh man.
Well, okay. I'm like, oh man. You're like, okay, well, you like silly fun. No, I struggle with silly fun.
I mean, even I have.
I think you struggle with it after repeated, like, you know, it's sort of the endurance side of it.
Mine is usually a trade up. It's like, okay, we'll play that, but then I'm going to teach you a euro. So thank you for that question. And then why the granularity of the scale? That came up a few times. So why are we rating things to 1 decimal place? And I have strong thoughts about this. Obviously, if you don't know already, I am a quantitative researcher, market researcher as a job. And so I care deeply about scale use, probably too much. And I knew that when we were putting this series together that everything is going to skew high on this scale. And it's not because because we are oriented towards rating everything between 7 and 9, which I know is a, kind of, that's how games, because of the games that get produced tend to be, good games.
Like it's good, but also by the time it's made it onto our bookshelf.
So this is the main thing.
That we've done some research. We know, conceptually at least, that we should enjoy them. And there's going to be elements, or there are designers that we've explored. So it makes sense that it wouldn't, be a surprise of like, oh, this is a 2.
Exactly. So we're rating our collection, and that has inherent bias that's going to drive all of our scores up. And so for that reason, we wanted to get to the decimal place. The other thing is that we are trying to make our way to our top 10 games of all time. And to be honest, that is up for grabs. And forcing ourselves to get to that decimal place means that all of those games that are going to fall in the high 8s and over 9s and edging towards 10, we have to discriminate between them.
I also find even, I'm not a numbers person, but even if you tell me, there's 2 games and it's like, what do you feel about this? It's like giving you a 7 or an 8. I feel like it doesn't give me enough shades of gradients. Yeah. And so I think for me, like I feel very strongly if something is a 7.5 versus a 7.7, like they feel very different. So I think that's why, for me, even as a non-numbers person.
Yeah, and if you think about the way you use BGG, if you hit a games page and it's a 7 versus a 7.9, I think you kind of construct different thoughts about that. So for me, the single decimal point, I know Rado goes into multiple decimal points, which is, he's seen a lot of games.
Yes.
But for us, 1 decimal point seemed like
that's
a good place, and it reflects what's done on BGG as well, so that's helpful. So without further ado, let's get into our next 10 games, starting with...
Oh, you want to start over
Fjords.
here?
We'll start over here.
Fjords. So in Fjords, we find ourselves in the beautiful landscape of the fjords, where we're going to be exploring. So initially, we're going to be exploring the land and setting up, almost like marking with I believe there's the longhouses, or hey, this is going to be a good place to sort of settle our people. And then, so there's the 2 phases. First is that exploring and kind of marking where are going to be the good places to expand from. And then the second stage, which is when the people arrive and they're like, okay, so where are we going to go? And it's the walking around and essentially placing your little, your meeple people spreading out throughout the land, taking up as much of it as, or more than your opponent, because this is a 2-player head-to-head game.
And it is. So this is the newer edition. So this was released recently, and it includes some things to make it more than a 2-player game if you want to play the variant. And it also includes runestones. But I just want to talk about the mechanics of the game, because if you haven't played it before, that first phase that Maggie was talking about is tile placement. So we are selecting a tile to add to the terrain. There are different terrain types that your people or Vikings are going to be able to move across or not be able to move across. There's different terrain types. And so we're essentially in the first half of the game creating the board that we're going to play on, which is interesting. We are building it out. But also deciding where we put those longhouses is incredibly important, because they are going to be the starting point from which your Vikings spread out in the second phase of the game. For that reason, it reminds me a lot of another game, Blue Lagoon, where you're kind of setting yourself up for the next phase, or in fact, the Guild of Merchant Explorers, which we'll talk about in this series, in this episode as well. So you're setting yourself up for that second phase, and then the second phase is very much a head-to-head, trying to race the other player and also to carve out sections where they can no longer access. So you're trying to use your people to create a blockade so that your opponent can't move through and get more stretch on the map. And that's essentially it. It's a very simple game. The addition in this is that there are the runestones, which change the scoring conditions for, sometimes it might be the surrounding Vikings around a particular tile if you place a runestone there, or they help you break the rules to ensure that you can, squeeze your way through.
Yeah, send someone down the river, and all of a sudden it's like, ooh, get
around
by
a mountain.
the blockage, or
so that you can kind of break your way through the puzzle and then make your way into the terrain that would be otherwise inaccessible because of the way that your opponent has blocked you out. So it is directly competitive, this game, which is something that we usually really like. For me, this game was not as exciting as a Blue Lagoon, for example, because in Blue Lagoon there's more objectives because you can go off and collect like resources as well, whereas this one, it is just really about where are my people going to go, and also from the time that you've developed in the map and your longhouses in the first half of the game, it feels a little bit like it's going to play out a certain way. It's almost like, okay, placing the Vikings. Yes, there's a bit of tension of, oh, do I block Maggie off over here first or over there first? Like, what do I want to, like, how am I going to go about that? But then it's kind of, okay, and then it makes sense for Maggie to counteract that by going somewhere else. So it feels a little bit like predetermined.
Yeah, your fate is mostly sealed with that first phase, and then it's almost like, oh, if you make a mistake or there's an oversight or if there's something that you didn't realize someone ended up blocking something, but that's almost more like the exception rather than the,
and I can totally see why this is a classic for a reason.
Very streamlined in terms of what you're trying to do, and
and it is beautiful to look at. I believe this is Beth Sobel art of the new edition. It's for us is a little bit too simple. I think there's not a lot of complexity in the strategy, and it is fairly straightforward in the tile placement component of the game. So for that reason,
what was the rating?
It's a little lower in my ratings. It's 6.6 for me.
I actually give it a 6.7.
6.7
for its very similar reasons. It's like it's a game that like I enjoy playing it, but I feel like it's very simple. Like I actually like when there's additional layers of other things going on, or
and so I enjoyed my time with it, but I think it's time to move it on from our collection.
I would agree.
We'll probably be culling Fjords. So
all right,
place that over there. The next game is a game that we've never really spoken about on the channel, but it is a game that I do enjoy, and it's called The Search for Planet X. Now, this is very much a pure deduction game, and the puzzle here is so pure in its style, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to find Planet X in this solar system consisting of a lot of other items. And those items are going to give you logic clues that relate to the position of Planet X. And so that's going to help you narrow down which sector we can find Planet X in. And so this game, interestingly, has an excellent app that is going to be the game master or drive the answers for the game and give you clues along the way. The board itself represents all of the different sectors in the solar system. I'm probably using the wrong terminology there, but space. In the solar system, and that's divided up by numbers. And what you're going to be doing is querying the game about your predictions about where different items are. And so, for example, the game sets up a set of rules about different items. So, for example, a gas cloud can only exist next to an empty sector. And so we know that if there's, you've got two sectors that have things in them, then the one in the middle can't be a gas cloud because the gas cloud has to be next to nothing.
Conditional logic.
Conditional logic, that's right. The other thing is like something like an asteroid, they have to travel together in a group. And so there's 4 of them in the basic version of this game. And so we know that they need to be in, 2 groups of 2.
Pairs, or all of them together.
Or 4 of them in adjacent sectors. And so you know this about things that exist. There's also like red dwarfs that can't be next to Planet X. So if you find one of those, well, then you know that the 2 adjacent sectors are not going to have Planet X in them. But the way that the game works mechanically and competitively with other players is that you're going to have a choice of what you want to do every round. So you're going to be choosing an action. But interestingly, there's this very cool time mechanic. And the time mechanic is going to restrict you and force you to wait for your turn while other players are getting more opportunity to get more clues and get more guesses in. depending on how specific you want your guess to be. So, for example, if I want to know if something exists in a broader range of sectors, that's not going to be as expensive from a time perspective as narrowing in on a smaller range of sectors. I'm not even sure.
But
this
it's
makes
also going
sense
to be
saying
less
that.
helpful. So it's like if you go really broad, then it's not going to cost you a lot of time. But
you don't have to wait as long for your next turn.
Yeah, but you're not going to have as definitive an answer to go. Oh, I definitely now know for sure.
Yeah. There's also a really cool clue system where you can do research, and the app is going to give you a clue that is very specific to the scenario that you're playing. And obviously, everyone's trying to race and discover Planet X. And what's interesting, though, is when you make a guess about the position of different items in this solar system, that is public information when it gets revealed. And so for that reason, you can actually misdirect your opponents as well. So you'd be like, oh, I think there's an asteroid over here, even though you know it's not there, because people start to use that in their deduction to plan out where they're trying to find Planet X. So it's a really interesting system. It is so pure in its execution that it feels like the puzzle, it feels like the puzzle itself has this evergreen quality about it, because it's so much like Sudoku. Like once you know those rules, it's really the different puzzles that are being generated that is the fun component, because you're constantly like using the same rules to
I agree.
work
So it's
out
like
the
if
puzzle.
this applies here, then it couldn't possibly be this thing in this sector, and it couldn't. I agree with that. I think with this one of the things that I really enjoy is that I always feel like there's those moments where you feel a little bit lost, where I'm like, I have no idea where I'm meant to, like, where this planet could be. But then I also feel like there's a lot of things that you can do that make me feel. I don't feel dumb. Like I sort of feel like you have those moments of feeling like, oh, I feel really clever now because I figured this bit out, or I feel so. I don't usually enjoy deduction, but this one I feel like it gives me enough things to do throughout that it keeps me engaged, even though obviously it's very abstract. It's going to be a very abstract experience.
And it's a fairly quiet, low interaction experience as well.
Yeah.
But I don't mind that so much here, because I do enjoy those little logic puzzles, and I do feel like the game doesn't get in the way of the purity of the puzzle here. So I really like what they've done, and the app is excellent. And the player aid I like as well, where you can write your clues down. What rating did I give it? I gave the Search for Planet X a 7.9. It's for me, it's a fantastic game. Deduction is not my favorite style of game, but for what it is and the execution level of this, I think it's really great if you love deduction.
I gave it a 7.5, which is a little bit lower than you. Probably because of, because it's so abstract. It's something that, like, I've enjoyed my time with it, but it's not something that I'm going to be rushing to go, and again, and again, and again. It's like,
It's a very specific audience, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't get this onto the table for every friend that comes over to our house. Like, it's just, it's very much, if you like those types of puzzles, or here's a crunchy heads down puzzle trying to race each other to solve it. So that is the Search for Planet X.
Nice.
Is it your turn over there? Yeah.
Yeah, we can go over here.
A classic.
Oh, a classic. Splendor.
Look at how well loved this box
it is beaten up. It's got tape here. It's like it's
destroyed.
The box has seen better days,
which tells you a little bit about how much we've played it.
Yeah, this was one of our gateway games that made us go, wait a second, what? Board games? What? What is this board game thing that you speak of? Splendor. Look, thematically, you're a gem collector, so it's really just...
You're a gemstone merchant of the Renaissance.
Yes, but it's a very abstract experience when you're actually playing. But I do love, so you've actually got these physical chips that represent all the different gems, and throughout the game you're trying to collect them and sort of make up these combos to then eventually attract these nobles or that are after particular gems. I think you're probably going to do a better job at it because it, like, thematically,
so abstract,
it's quite it's quite a thematic little stretch. And somehow, you know, as you're kind of collecting or making up your particular stones, I don't know how you make up stones with other, like, you get gems to then have buy a gem.
Don't think about it too deeply.
I'm gonna develop a headache from trying to stretch further. Yeah.
Splendor is obviously a classic, and it's a classic for a reason. In this game, it is a combination of both engine building and set collection. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be drafting from 3 tiers of cards that are in the center of the table. There are cards that are going to be easier to get because you have to spend fewer gems to get those cards. And then as we move up into the higher tiers, they're going to be really expensive, and you're going to be looking at it thinking, well, I can only have up to 10 poker chip gems at a time in my hand. How am I ever going to be able to afford that card at the, you know, higher tier? And the answer to that is, well, as you start to draft cards into your tableau, they are going to give you permanent gems that you don't need to spend when you purchase other cards. So at the start of the game, you are using the poker chips and relying on those to collect them and then spend them to buy cards. But as you build up that tableau, now you're getting cards for free, and it feels super satisfying because you can just like, oh, I can just buy that for free.
Buying power is just so much stronger now.
Exactly. And as you're working your way up the higher tiers, with those cards comes victory points. And this game is a race to 15 points. The person who meets that first will win the game, or will trigger the end of the game, and then hopefully in that last round you can exceed
scramble for
15 by more.
Points, yeah.
But there are a couple of other elements in this game that make it great. One, you can put cards aside, so you can draft a card, reserve them,
lay by, as we call them
love to
household.
call it lay by. In America that would be layaway, where you put something aside to pay for it later. You can do that, but you can only have up to 3 cards stored away, and you need to think about how you're going to, you know, you can get yourself into trouble if those 3 cards are too ambitious, and then you've left yourself no room to scale up. And then also the nobles, as Maggie mentioned, are another little element of the game that just give you victory points once you meet a certain criteria for the tableau, when you've got a certain combination of the different gems collected in your tableau, which can give you those final victory points that you need to hit 15. So we'll talk about how we feel about this game. I adore this game. I love this game. And some people are going to be like, that's a, you know, entry level filler, a gateway game, too simple.
Well, it was.
It was. And there's definitely a bias towards like the nostalgic feelings that I have towards this game. But at the same time, the design, I just think it's a fabulous game.
It's simple, but it's solid. It's a solid design.
It is really solid, but I just enjoy the tension in this game because you have to be so on point. If you play with experienced players, you need to be so certain about the sequence of the actions that you're going to take. And sometimes that gets disrupted by the fact that that gem that you need is now exhausted and you're waiting for the other players to spend them so that there's more of those gems returned to the supply, so that you can work it out. I love the decision of when you're drafting gems, you can either take 3, which is one of, if they're all different colors, different types of gems, or you can take 2 of a single type, which kind of restricts you if you've got one of those cards that requires you to have a lot of one gem type. I love that. I just think it's so smart, and I really just enjoy the race element of it. The tension is high.
The tension is high because there's that race element, but there's also a lot of looking at the board and looking at, you know, what are you going to need, or what are you desperate for, or what are you, you're waiting on this, aren't you? And, you know, a bit of hate drafting can also happen. So I think it's just very, very simple to teach. Like, it's such a quick and easy thing for anyone to kind of wrap their head around. It's like, okay, this is what I'm doing. But then, like the complexity is it's a very elegant way of creating tension, and how tactile those chips are. It's very satisfying. Those poker chips, which are your gems.
So what did you give Splendor? I gave Splendor an 8.1.
Ooh, I'm very close to that. I give it an 8. So it's an 8 for me. I think, again, solid, very, very abstract in terms of its gameplay, but it's like I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, is it a game that we reach for all the time? No, but is it a game that I would absolutely play any time? Someone set it up or for like, let's
Is it
play
leaving our collection?
Never. Absolutely never. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but probably never.
Probably unlikely.
Yeah, so that is Splendor. The next game is a game called Egizia Shifting Sands. Now, Egizia is more of a classic Euro that you would see on our shelves all the time. This is a revised edition from a classic game of Egizia, which they changed the artwork and they changed a few of the mechanics as well are changed. This particular edition, the Kickstarter edition, has the original game on the back of it. We've never played the original game. We really like the new edition of it, so we've just always played that one. Yeah,
revised edition.
Revised rule set. Sorry, would you like to talk about what it's about?
No, you're kind of going down the Nile. So you've got there's a river, and you've got your boats, and you're going down the Nile, and then you're having to make decisions along the way of where you're going to stop, because mostly it's a one-way flow. and so sometimes there might be some really valuable stuff all the way downstream, but you're like, but then, and so I can have first dibs and go there first, but it means I'm going to miss out on all of these things. So there's a tension of, do I go slow and steady and try and collect a lot of things, or just speed through and get some really powerful things down?
I thought you were going to talk about the theme, but obviously
you're going down.
It's an Egyptian theme.
Egyptian theme. You're going down the River Nile. You're collecting different resources and contributing towards the creation of different monuments.
Yes,
the building of different monuments.
Yeah, and I think that this game, it may have been the first game that did the one-way path or one-way kind of action selection worker placement style game, where once you move past a space, you cannot go back. And that creates so much tension in this game, because when you are moving down the Nile, you're collecting cards along the way, and these cards are going to change every round of the game, and throughout the game they get more and more powerful. And these cards are going to do things that give you more power from a worker perspective, from your labor perspective, I should say, because there's boats which act as the worker placement, but then there are your workforce, which are going to determine how much you can get done from a monument perspective and building perspective, which gives you victory points in this game. So some of the cards are going to help you build up the things that you have available to you, including resources as well. And then there are also action spots along the way down the Nile that are going to allow you to actually have the ability to build the monuments or contribute to the monuments for victory points. So the tension always in this game is when you're looking at along the Nile and you're like, there is a really powerful card halfway down the Nile. If I jump there first, it means that I can no longer do anything prior. I can't take that action, I can't take that card, and everyone else is going to be able to cruise on by and get those things.
Not only take their time and pick up everything along the way, which might ultimately be more powerful than the one seemingly powerful thing that I'm racing to.
But if I leave it there, then that means my opponent's probably going to jump ahead and pick it up, and then it's like, oh. And so in this game, you've got these workers that are boats, and you have quite a number of them, but in every round you're not going to necessarily use all of them, because this round I just want to grab that and do that action, and that's going to be how I jump ahead. And interestingly, the building action, so there's worker placement spots along the way, they get played out at the end of the round after all of the boats have been placed in turn order of the time that you arrived there. So it's not like I can jump ahead.
Who's been queuing up for the longest?
Yeah, exactly.
Who got there earliest? Earlier bird gets the first choice.
Which means that someone might actually affect a monument in a way that means like now I can't contribute to that as much as I wanted to, because it gets progressively harder to contribute to these monuments.
Maybe you rushed there and you didn't manage to get enough resources along the way, or something shifted them and you couldn't generate the resources that you need, and so even though you got there early, you got nothing to pay for them. There's some other interesting dynamics in this game. On your little player board, you are affecting your labor force, and that consists of a leader and workers, and their interaction is quite interesting in the way that you choose to spend their
labor points, if you will. The other element that's really interesting and very interactive is there is this indicator on the board that shows which types of resources or which types of cards are going to be able to produce resources at the end of the round or between rounds. And that can be affected by the players. So if I only have one particular type of card that is generating resources, Maggie might be really annoying and move that indicator away so I can no longer produce that resource. And that's going to really impact on my ability to get things done in the next round. And so that part of it's really interactive. And then at the end of the Nile, you can jump ahead there and you can pick up Sphinx cards. And Sphinx cards really impact this game because they are private objective cards that are going to score you points at the end of the game for getting certain things done. And Maggie loves those cards and always has so many of them. I
love having those like secret objectives that you're things that you're working towards, because I just love having something
a goal,
but it's a lot more individual, like solitaire. I've got my own little thing that I'm working on, and no one else may know that I'm working towards that, and sort of no one else can mess up with my thing. I
love Egizia. I think it is a fabulous game for many reasons. It's not that difficult to teach. Everything is in this compact board that, and it has like a very linear, because of the Nile, it's like, well, you can do this up here and this down here, and your choice how much you race. I love that the board is constantly shifting between rounds because of you're putting new cards out that get progressively more powerful. And there's just in every step of this game, you are scratching your head and like just, oh my god, the tension of like the trade-offs that you have to make every single turn.
I love
good.
All the different layers of all the different things that you can focus on or work on, or potentially even ignore if you so choose. So it just feels like, again, it's one of those games that every time I go in there, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try this sort of strategy, or maybe I'll try and do this and see how that plays out.
For me, I love the tension in this game, and that's why I have given Egizia an 8.6, which is extremely high. It would probably be higher. However, one part that I don't love is actually the Sphinx cards. I feel like they're a little bit swingy for the victory points at the end of the game, and everything else is so pure in its decision making, and your ability to jump forward might mean that I can contribute to the pyramid more, and that for me is very much perfect information, whereas the Sphinx cards for me, I can take or leave those. So even though Maggie uses them and usually beats me, which is probably why I have a mixed relationship with them.
I really enjoy those cards. For me, I'm actually going to give this an 8. So it's an 8 for me. I think it's a solid game. I'll really enjoy every time that I play it. Why is it not higher?
Well, it's a high level of interaction, and it can be quite mean, I would say.
It can be, but I think I don't know. I really enjoy my time with this game. I just find that it's a game that when I play it, I'm like, yeah, that was really fun, but I'm not like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to like. I never feel obsessed with it. Like I just want to keep bringing it out and bringing it out. It's like I have a great time. I think it's a solid design. I think there's a lot of things to do, but it's a solid 8.
Great game. I love the tension in this game. That is Egizia.
All right.
So, your turn.
My turn? So, this is a game that we covered recently, and it's Planted. So, Planted is a game about something that we can't really do very well in real life, which is keeping house plants alive. Not only that, making them thrive, so growing them, nurturing them. And so in this game, we're going to have our beautiful player board is going to represent the different plants that we have in our house, and those plants are going to require things like sunlight and water and food.
What?
Yeah,
plants require food.
Apparently, that's why we can't manage to make this work, in real life.
No.
So in this game, there's a bit of a drafting game where you're going to have a hand of different cards. Some of them are going to be representing those elements, like the sunlight and so you can either play them and obtain those elements. Some of them are going to be tools or decorations. So those are going to be the types of cards that allow you to either get advantages along the way. So for example, every time I play one water, now it's actually going to give me an extra green thumb up that then helps almost like as a wild later on. So or every time I play a one water, I might get double water or get so those benefits. Or then the other type of card is the end game bonus, like the way that you'd be scoring or additional ways of scoring.
Yeah, decoration cards. Yeah.
Yeah, so with that, there's the interesting thing with this game is you can't just be feeding your plants all the way along the game. Is at the end of each round, all those resources that you've collected plus all the plants that you've collected, you'll do one feeding or one nurturing of your plants, and so they're only ever going to be going up, or growing, one leaf or one level at a time.
Yeah.
And obviously, the higher they grow, the more points you get. But there's a combination of points that you're getting from all these from your end game cards as well. And so it's a very pleasant, incredibly aesthetically pleasing, beautiful.
It is beautiful
production.
Yeah,
as well.
just on the drafting. So in each round, you are passing around a hand of cards, but instead of drafting them and saving them all, it is draft one, play one.
Play it.
So you're immediately playing that card and collecting the resources or
setting it as a tool or a decoration.
Yeah, setting it aside on your player board to kind of build up
or
the momentum.
Burning it to get for nursery to get a new plant onto your.
Yes, so that's what I was going to say, is that everybody at the same time either reveals the action that they're going to take with that card or says the word nursery as they reveal it to burn the card and basically select a new plant to bring into your player board. And across the whole game, you only are going to have 6 plants, and the plants are what give you a significant amount of victory points because every time you can nurture them, you're going to be able to. Were you just checking if they were 6?
Yeah, I'm like, is it 6? For some reason, I feel like it was 5. I can't remember now if it's 5. And it's still one of those things that it's where it's. I can't remember now. Is it?
I can see her glance at the box.
No, I think you're right. It is 6. It's 6. You're right.
Yeah.
This is doing that thing, when you put the lid on a game and then you realize that it's upside down and the back end.
Anyway, so you're going to be every round giving the opportunity to score that plant by having the right resources on hand, and that is kind of, some plants are going to give you more opportunity to do that across a number of rounds. Yeah. But that's basically it. So you are collecting things, playing your card, getting new plants, and then feeding them. And for me, this game does not have enough tension in it, and it's way too simple for me.
Very relaxed, though. It's a very relaxed.
It is very relaxed
experience. Yeah,
but it's just, for me, I felt as though it's just not a super interesting puzzle. It's just a very light game, and I can totally see if you love plants or if you're looking for a lighter experience, this is it. But for me, it was just the stuntedness of the taking cards, drafting one, waiting for everyone to choose one, then revealing it, and then only to get one water is kind of like, for me, a little dragged out for. I feel like hampered, like I'm not making a lot of progress.
You don't feel like you're getting extra satisfying sort of turns every time.
And for that reason.
And it's also very, like, it's because you're not getting to do, like, incredible super combos, like, you never feel, like, extremely powerful. It is, but I mean, thematically speaking, that's not the way gardening should feel. Like,
gardening is
a garden to be like, whoa, like it's a much more mindful, relaxing, and experience. And things are going to be growing in their own time, a little bit at a time. And you're not about that life. Well, as evidenced by, we can't keep any plant alive.
So Planet is a 6.4 for me. It is a little bit too light. I really appreciate the componentry of the game. Everything is super beautiful. But a little lower for me.
I will give it a 6.8. So it's higher for me. I just really I adore the table presence of this. I love the artwork and the cards. I love the little components in it. So but it is, I agree, like it is quite a light experience overall. So
cool.
Yeah, okay. That's Planted.
The next game is a game called Dream Crush, and this is the light party style game that we're going to talk about this episode, because in Dream Crush what you are doing is you have 3 suitors, and they are on it's basically like a dating show. So you have 3 possible people that your friends could choose as their lifelong partner. And as the game progresses, those 3 people are going to have attributes revealed about them that makes them more or less dateable in the eyes of your friends. And the whole game is basically trying to guess at what point your friends will trade between one suitor and the next. And usually they are 3 bad options, but you have to work out what is the what is Maggie's deal breaker?
Yeah.
Like, if this person is, say they were a rock and roll fanatic who wants to take you to a rock and roll concert every weekend, is that enough for Maggie to swap to person over here who
I'm trying to remember what are some of the big things. Well, it might be like, they're an influencer. It's like an influencer maybe the no-go for someone else.
Yeah, or they snore, or it might be something about just like their annoying habits or things that they say at the end of every sentence. So there are all these little things that might be a turn on for some people and a turn off for others. And the power of this game is certainly in the dynamic between your social group. This is a game that because at the end of each round, you're going to be, once new information is revealed about each of these candidates for love, you are going to write down on your sheet what you predict every person around the table.
Think everyone's going to be like who
they're going to date, and you're collecting that information over time. So I can see that, hey, you know what? Over time, Maggie has picked Tom for the last 4 selections, but something just was revealed about Tom. And is that enough to make Maggie swap to someone else that she hadn't picked at all throughout the rest of the game? Like, what is, so you're trying to work out the timing between people swapping between the candidates. And so it's just a hilarious game about looking at your friends and being like, I can't believe that you could excuse that or deal with that on a daily basis.
Or I can't believe that would be your deal breaker.
Yeah, that's your deal breaker. So you put up with all those other things and that's your deal breaker.
Yeah. Which is why this is a game that only really makes sense and only really shines when you know the group of people that you're playing with.
Yes.
This would make no sense.
No sense.
Like, this is not a game that I would ever take to a con where I, if I'm playing with strangers, it's like, I have no idea, nor would I want to be assuming, what people would actually be into or want to like find as a turn off or something that put them off something. But it's when you have a circle of friends where you all kind of know each other.
It's a safe space,
and it's fine to like kind of make those like wild assumptions. And because again, like we're talking about like a romantic date, but it doesn't actually have to be. Like sometimes like it's obviously a fantasy crush, and so it could be for some people like that's a bit of a strange concept, but it might be fine in terms of like, well, who would you see as like could this be your best friend, or could it be your roommate, or the person that you just like, I just can't wait to hang out with you.
And again, you're choosing from 3 bad options, generally speaking.
Well, yeah.
So there are usually there's very rarely one person that is like, although there has been a game where
sometimes it's like, wow, that is a catch. You've almost decided to.
No, you have. That's what,
no, you were like
you see, between couples, it gets a little bit awkward because you're like,
that's the best.
Why don't you marry her then?
Yeah. You're like, this is a better catch than my partner.
That's right. You've chosen her all the way through.
You do know this person doesn't exist. Yeah. They're just a construct in this moment. What I love about this is how three-dimensional some of these characters end up becoming, because there's so many random little things that is like, yeah, of course you can see, like, that person.
Yes.
You know that person in real life, that is like, yeah, they've got all these almost contradictions in their personality. Yeah. The other thing that I love is when you have couples who are playing this, sometimes they'll be like, oh, why is that a deal breaker? It's like, I don't like the look of them. It's like, they look exactly like your current partner. Like, what do you mean? Like, they're almost like so it's like all of, again, why you want to play this
safe
as a group,
space.
where it's going to be a
very
safe
space. And if you understand like your single friends or even your coupled up friends and their history of dating, even funnier, because
more hilarious.
You'd be like, well, I know that's why it didn't work out with so-and-so, so I'm pretty sure you're not going to select them. Or
again, very potentially dangerous territory. So this is why you want to play this with friends that you have
again, and also we've played it with family. I would say it's probably more of a game for friends than family, because it can get a little bit awkward as well, talking about your family members and their dating preferences.
Yeah, and your parents and your siblings. It's like, it's a little bit
weird. But anyway, light, fun, highly interactive, very much leverages the friendship of the group. I gave this, you won't be surprised, a high rating for fun, and I gave it 8.5. And that is really high for this style of game. It is super light, but it's just, the laughter that it creates.
Yeah.
Like, I have had so many people say, can I borrow Dream Crush?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to the social event and with a group of friends, and it was so funny when we played it.
Yeah.
And so it just creates a really fun dynamic.
Surprisingly for me, it's also quite a high score, and I'm giving it an 8. And the reason it's like a surprisingly high
it's
score
so
is like,
fun.
I know,
mean-
because it's quite fun, and I tend to not like fun games, but I don't know, like I think it's probably more like because I love reflecting on, the human, like what makes humans tick. And I think because there's so much of that psychology of, attraction and repulsion, I guess, to like all these, seemingly like innocuous or like little things that people do. It's like, I find that so fascinating, seeing like what will make someone shift their entire, I mean, it's like, it's like they'll compromise so many of their values for things. And then it's like this one little thing's like, no, I will not.
I have to say, Maggie's very loyal in this game. She tends to choose someone and then like overlooks a lot of flaws, and that probably says a lot about our relationship. But that is Dream Crush. And the next one.
Oh, the next one. The next one, we have talked about this and covered it in multiple formats. The next one is Nusfjord. So Nusfjord is an Uwe Rosenberg game where you are playing as different fishing companies in the beautiful fishing town of Nusfjord. And this always, this has a really, really special place, holds a very special place in my heart, because it's a game that is, it's a smaller kind of experience, but it feels spiritually, it puts me in a very similar place to A Feast for Odin when I play it. So this feels like the accessible, I don't have the time to do a full feast, but this scratches that itch. And all you're really doing is you've got your fishing company. Therefore, because it's a company, you're going to be issuing shares in your fishing company. You do want to issue those shares because otherwise they're going to be negative points at the end. But all you're going to be doing is you're going to be growing your fleet of boats. That'll determine how big your fishing catch is going to be. And then every round when you're going to catch all those fish, then those fish are going to be divided or paid out to whoever owns shares on your company. It's going to also be paid out to different elders, there's elder cards that you can recruit along the way, who are going to be helping you with different things. One of the main things is going to be ultimately like, what do you want to be getting all these fish for? So that you can develop your estate. So you're going to be kind of clearing up space on your board in terms of like kind of like your personal kind of forest area, and then generating wood, which then you're going to be able to create the space and generate the money to build these cards that are all these buildings. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those buildings are then going to determine almost like what kind of life you ended up, what kind of business focus you ended up having.
Yeah, and it's a worker placement game. So there is a very small board where you'll be placing at your workers, which I wish the workers were a little more interesting, because they're just these
discs.
They're like big discs.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange. But you use these big discs as workers that you place out, and you don't get that many actions for each turn. And on top of that, the worker placement spots are very, very limited. And so it's often the case that something is removed from the possibility of that turn. And so that's kind of where elders come in, because as you recruit elders, they're going to unlock more things that you can do without having to rely so heavily on the limited worker placement spots. But the main element of this game are the cards that you're going to be drafting, or the buildings, by spending the resources, whether that's fish, wood, coins, and some of those are going to change throughout the course of the game. So in the early times, you're going to be collecting these buildings that are going to help you get things done and give you bonuses along the way. And then towards the end of the game, it kind of switches to these end game scoring conditions that could be about the setup of your board or how much of certain things that you have. And so it's a game that is both worker placement, but then also this kind of building out your tableau of cards that are going to give you victory points at the end of the game. There are a lot of things that I like about this game. I think Maggie's right. This is a game that gives you a Euro feel with fairly low setup of the board. It works fantastically at 2.
Yes.
And that gives it a really unique position in our collection, because not a lot of big Euros feel like really satisfying at 2.
Scale well to 2, but this one, and it's a great solo experience as well. Again, very similar to the solo experience of A Feast for Odin, where you're not facilitating AIs, you're just taking your essentially you're blocking yourself from your next turn. And so I absolutely adore this game. And even though it's got like all those cards of all those buildings that you're going to be building, that is actually what gives the game so much of its replayability, because there's a lot of different decks.
There are different decks.
That's also like where the expansions kind of come in with new kind of decks. You can also play this as a campaign mode, which I love, where you're working your way through pretty much all of the cards over a series of games, which again, I love seeing how you're having to pivot or shift your strategy based on the different buildings that are available.
And the mix of cards really do change the feel of the game, because they will emphasize different things or different resources or different scoring conditions. And I just think that is really clever, because it's like having this base layer of very, very a small amount of worker placement spots, and the things that you're trying to get done and, upgrade your fleet and that type of thing, they all stay the same, but then it's just this changing deck of cards, and that really changes the feel of the game. Having said that, I'm less of a fan of reading cards in the world of like Agricola, and there's all these games where you need to like be paying a lot of attention to the cards that come out and make sure you're across all of the possibilities, and then think about how those cards all fit together in terms of a strategy. That is less fun for me. Even though I appreciate this game, I think it's excellent, and I love the worker placement element as always. It's really tight. I love the fish thing as well. The fact that you don't immediately get access to your fish. You've got to, once you've caught them, not only do you have to pay out fish in terms of shares and also to your elders, then it's like the leftover fish, I need to try and get them out of the holding
storage house
into my usable.
And that's finite, so you can overfish, and then it's sort of wasted. And
and then also spending fish out, and there's another way to spend fish to get victory points. I like all of the dynamics of that, and thinking about how you're going to clear out the forest in order to have space to even put the buildings to begin with. So I love all the dynamics in the game. I'm just not a huge fan of like the reading element. So for Nusfjord, I gave it an 8.2. So still a really like great game, and I love playing it, but just not as high as some other games because of the cards. How about you?
I give it an 8.7, so it's a lot higher for me. I think this is an excellent game. I really enjoy it.
I thought it would have been even higher for you, actually.
And the reason for that is, and again, I think one thing that I'm discovering is I'm a very hard taskmaster when it comes to like rating things, but that's an 8.7 is it's high praise for me. And I think the reason it's not higher, it's really just out of, I think it's more just because it's a faster experience. Like it's a quicker, kind of faster experience. And I think for me, I tend to kind of rate higher the games that I feel like, oh really my gosh, there's so many. And there's also like so many more, I think when there's even more layers of things going on. Again, not to take anything away from this, I think this is an excellent game.
So that's great Uwe Rosenberg game.
Yes.
The next game is the Guild of Merchant Explorers. Also, it's not that old actually, but this game is essentially it is exactly like a roll and write. However, instead of drawing a map, you are going to be using physical elements, little cubes, to build out the paths on your map. And this game, you are playing as merchant explorers, and your player board is a map, and you are trying to build out from your starting city and explore as much of the terrain as possible. And the way that this works is that you're going to try and, from your starting city, build out, and similar to Fjords, like we spoke about, you're going to be putting, I think they're called outposts throughout the map.
And trading, sort of like finding where the cities are in a specific area, and then like your trading post, which is where you're going to be able to,
Yeah, and so in
points
subsequent rounds of the game, you get to start from those new places that you've explored and developed. So throughout the game, you are progressively being able to explore more and more. But the cool thing about this game is that it's driven by this deck of cards that one at a time you're going to reveal what this card has on it. And it has a terrain type, and that's telling you that you can place your little path cubes out onto that type of terrain from your path that you're building. And what's interesting about that is that you have perfect information at the start of the game about the cards that are in that deck. So you can plan ahead. You don't know which order they're going to come out in, but you do know that they are going to come out. And so you know that by the end of this round, you should hopefully be able to get over into that terrain type. The other thing is that as you're going along, you're collecting coins for different things, particularly for being able to cover up a whole group of terrain along the way, and then be able to also put out those new outposts that you can start from the next round, as well as discovering things along the way, like there'll be shipwreck type treasure that you can grab. If you get to the corners of the map, that's going to give you like big points as well. And so
the lookouts, I think, from memory. So
and then you are also in this game, I think the thing that's interesting, but the thing that I love most about this game is that you're also going to be in every round getting this one-off card that is unique to you. So you're going to be able to choose this card, and this card is going to activate in the first round. You'll get one of those cards, and every one of those cards feels like it's game breaking and super overpowered. So everyone around the table is going, whoa, like that is such a great card. But everybody feels the same because everybody has this amazing card.
Really powerful,
but what's great about it is that super powerful card is going to now be activated every round of the game from here on out. And in this next round, though, you're also going to get a new overpowered, amazing card. And then in the round after, now you've got two. And so the feeling of this game is at the start very slow.
You feel really limited when you're like, how am I ever going to? You've got also objectives. And it's like, how am I ever going to reach those objectives? It's like I can hardly feel like I get any momentum before the round is going to come to an end.
But then by the end of the game, you're just like, whoa. I'm just like doing so much, and hold on, don't move on yet because I've still got so much to do, and I'm still getting coins and that type of thing. So the Guild of Merchant Explorers is just really an interesting concept. It's kind of unlike a lot of games in our collection just because of that element of being like a roll and write, but having more tactile pieces. I really like that they went there and they didn't make it just another roll and write, because then it wouldn't be as interesting and having to wipe off your board every round and start again. Like I just love the little pieces.
Yeah, it's really strange, but also it feels kind of nice to be able to remove all those pieces in between and go, oh no, like only physically you can see like these are the only spots that I've left myself as new starting points that I can start from the following rounds.
A few bit of critical things that I don't like about the production of it. One, the colours are really muted, and it's okay. I don't mind it.
That.
Yeah, it's okay. But I really dislike the coins. The coins in this game, they all look the same, but they have different values on them. And the reason why they all look the same is so you can hide who's winning, because you want to turn them down so the values aren't shown. But you have to do so much exchanging of coins in this game that it makes it infuriating, because coins run out of a certain denomination, and then you've got to constantly be exchanging them. And then that means you're like, where is the 10?
There's a lot of time wasted and going, wait, what's that? Because you're hiding it from everyone else, but you're also hiding it from yourself. Yeah. So it's one of those, as I can see, they
had a player screen or something. Yeah,
they went with it. Let's not do a player screen, but it's like that would make life a lot easier.
So that is like incredibly infuriating. Also, the boards themselves are really thin. I don't really like the cardboard they're on. It feels like very destable, and because you're like putting out like
they can kind of slide
cubes,
a little
if
bit.
you like
cubes.
bump it, I mean it's like a lot of games. If you bump most games, you're probably going to lose a little bit of what's
Particularly if
going
you've got
on.
a lot of things like sitting on it,
Yeah,
precariously sitting.
But I just wish the boards were a little bit more stable because they're like quite thin and light. But other than that, I felt like this was a really intriguing concept. The game it comes with a lot of different maps that add in different elements.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that as well.
It'll be great in difficulty. So as you kind of progress through the maps, the challenges get trickier and trickier.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it for its uniqueness. So I gave it a 7.6.
What did I give this? So I gave this pretty similar to you, a 7.5 for me. Because again, I enjoy my experience with it, but I feel like I actually have played through all the maps and I've played solo as well through all of them. And I kind of got to a point where I feel like I've done it now.
Yeah. And the reason though why I want to keep it in the collection is because it's just a really nice it's like a nice gateway. I think that it's like
to bring people on.
A game to take to a con or for me to take to work or something that are like around non-gamers. It also is super satisfying for gamers. And I also just really love the feeling of, you know, the momentum and the building, and like that's what you want to give new players to the hobby, as well as gamers get a lot of satisfaction out of like, okay, the later stage of this game, I'm just doing
it feels
so
like
much.
It builds the experience, and you had that sort of sense of powerlessness initially, and then by the end you're like, oh yeah, you know the powerful cards that are going to come through, and I actually really do love that element of you know which cards are in your in your deck, and you know, as you just don't know, in the deck, and you just don't know at what point they're going to come out.
Yeah. This is the Guild of Merchant Explorers. The name still hasn't grown on me, but
yes.
At
one point I was like, is it GOME? G-O-M, but then it's like, no, just go back to Guild
of Merchant Explorers. Okay. We usually call it merchants.
Okay. Or you do the stumbling. Is it the Merchants Guild of what, the explorers with the merchant? Yeah. So there's a lot of stumbling with that one. But anyways,
good game under the hood though.
Moving on to the next game.
Moving on to the next game.
Next game is The Loop. Which is a cooperative game, which we are known for not being good at
nor enjoying.
There's no sand timer in this one, which means that we're going to be less into it. But in The Loop, and I think I'm going to need your help with thematic, because this one's a little bit about time travel, and you're much better with the time travel stuff. We've got evil Dr. Foe, who's trying to kind of take over, but in this, and so he's kind of traveling from different different time points and creating these. Is it like a vortex? Yeah. So which could essentially, there's a risk of completely collapsing time for everyone, including for Dr. Foe. And Dr. Foe doesn't realize, because, you know, is so caught up in the greedy and ambitiousness of his plans. So we're going to be trying to, we're time agents, moving around these different time periods, trying to frustrate the plans of Dr. Foe to keep order by trying to achieve a few different objectives.
And Dr. Foe is moving around the board. So the board is circular, and there are segments that represent each of the different time periods. And we are going to be moving around. And one thing that's really annoying about Dr. Foe is creating clones of himself, which come in the form of these discs that are going to be placed out into each of these different time zones. Now, the problem with the disc, and we've really buried the lead here, is that at the center of this board is this cube distributor. I don't know what the thematic term is for that.
I don't know what the official, I can't remember.
It is scary and terrible, because what it's going to be doing is it's going to be turning around, and we're going to be drawing a card that is going to tell us which way it's going to be facing.
It's a 3D machine. That's what they call it.
3D machine.
Well, that's
in
the components. No. I'm sure that inside it'll,
Anyway, and the way it works is you're going to be taking these red cubes that you're going to drop into the top of it, and it's going to distribute those cubes across 3 different time periods. And now the issue with having and leaving clones of Dr. Foe lying around is that that's going to increase the number of cubes that you're going to be putting into this machine to distribute randomly across these 3 different time periods. Now, each of these time periods can only cope with 3 of these cubes before it is going to be destroyed and collapse into itself. And we don't want that to happen, because when one gets destroyed, we not only lose that period of time, which thematically is probably a big deal. But we
I would
also
imagine, conceptually,
we also
travel-wise.
lose one of our game objectives, and we need these game objectives to be able to beat Dr. Foe, because the game objectives are around the outside, which gets turned over if that time period gets destroyed, and now it means, hey, this is no longer one of the objectives you can complete in order to win against Dr. Foe. So the way we're going to be trying to get rid of these clones that are around the board, as well as the red cubes that are accumulating on each of the time periods, is to use card play in this game. And what we're going to be doing is each person is playing as an asymmetric character, and that character has a unique deck of cards, and the cards that you're going to be using are going to enable you to push the clones around the board, and once they land into, I think it's called a paradox, the time zone that they're basically asking for, where they came from. Once they slide into there, they disappear off the board. So we need to make sure that we're always cleaning up the clones. But the other thing is that we can kind of manipulate where we are, and we can use different actions to basically ensure that we're trying to remove those red discs. And also we can do what's called a loop. And the reason why the game is called the loop is because we can use these green cubes to our advantage to try and redo more actions, or basically take our turn again, and be able to not take our turn again, but basically untap cards that we've used for the ability to use them again. So that's the way that the game works. There's also other artifact cards that you can collect along the way that are going to kind of help your deck. And one thing I do like about the artifact cards is that they're all related to the time period that they come from. So they're like kind of cool illustrations.
The artwork in this, and the table presence in this with that 3D machine in the middle. It's really stunning. Like, I really, really love what they've gone for with that. Yeah. That machine though, like that distributor, I dislike it so much, just in terms of like what it does to me as I'm playing, because sometimes those cubes can end up going into the same era, or like it just really, because it's sort of meant to be random, but it's like it makes the game so difficult, so like ridiculously difficult. So I don't mind it as a thing, but I really actually dislike what it adds mechanically, because I do think it introduces far too much luck. So much random,
and yes, you can mitigate against the 3, but it's actually a really hard game. And for me, it's also a game that is a little bit prone to alpha gaming, because or like a person basically dictating what should happen next, because it is really hard, and you do have to work together, but you also have information about the cards that your opponent has, and so it does lend itself to like, oh well, you should do this and then I will do that, and then let's like play that out. And some people love that, and some people love that about cooperative games. I just don't. Of course, I don't love cooperative games, so it's a bit of an unfair review, but we have to rate all of our games out of 10, and for me, based on everything you know about my game preferences, the loop is a 6.7. It doesn't have the kind of tension that I enjoy, where this is like the game versus you. We've talked about sand timers, and for some reason that's the exception to the rule, but for this one, I miss the competitive tension against other players, and I didn't really love the puzzle so much. I found it really hard, and that was disheartening. I felt like I ended the game and I just felt disheartened, and I wanted to feel good about what I've done.
This one is a 6.6 for me for similar reasons. I feel like obviously the gameplay itself, it feels very abstract to me, because it's like you're kind of figuring out, okay, we'll go over here and we'll push this over there and we'll pull this over here, and then so a lot of it's just like logistics of a puzzle. Then and then it's so difficult that like there's so many turns that you just feel so disheartened, and one of the things that I don't enjoy when I'm gaming is the sense of like something just feels unfair, like, well, I didn't even get a chance to like try and avert for that, or which again it's more from a player preference point of view. Like,
and I was just reflecting on that,
mitigate things.
I was just reflecting on, if you are a competitive player as opposed to a cooperative player, at least if everyone does terribly in a competitive game, there's still a winner and you still can celebrate that person because it's like, we all did terribly, but you did less terribly than me. So well done. And it feels satisfying because there's still like an outcome that someone has won. And then as a group, you can get better and better. And then it becomes more competitive and more competitive. I don't enjoy the process of like losing 5 games before you win your 6th. Like for some reason that just doesn't work for me, but a lot of people would really enjoy that.
And sometimes by the time you win that one, you go, is it because did we just get lucky with the way that the cubes fell and the cards that we were able to kind of play,
that came out,
objectives that we had. So it's like it's a game where I never feel, it's like I can never fully enjoy a sense of accomplishment because because of the element of the randomness, I think.
Having said that though, it is like a solid design.
Oh yeah, the design itself,
so I actually do appreciate it for what it is. I just really recognize that it's not for me.
It's not our style.
So that is the loop, and it probably will move on from our collection. Definitely will move on from our collection. And the last and final game is a game that I feel like people are going to want to know our opinion of. It's been sitting in the background of our videos for a long time. It's been in our collection for a long time. It is Blood Rage, and a lot of people love this game. And in this game, you are playing as different Viking clans, and you are basically trying to. It's the end of times, and you're basically doing all you can to try and go out in a blaze of glory. And
you want to be in the good books by the time you like reach Valhalla,
yes,
with
exactly.
pride.
And the way that you're going to be doing that, well, mechanically, there's a lot of area control game. It's the primary mechanic of this game is really area control. There's a map with different
regions,
provinces, or no, what are they called?
Regions. I'd say like areas.
Yeah, different regions on the board, and you are going to have your clan, which represents kind of different strength values, which represent their impact on that area control game, and you're going to be trying to move them around, and then battle other players as well on some occasions, in order to gain control. And what's really interesting about this game is you have a board and you're able to upgrade your clan. So first of all, you will be able to place cards down onto your board to be able to upgrade them. But the other component is that you're also going to have these quest cards that are going to give you objectives to achieve in order to get victory points at the end of the round. And a lot of that is to do with the area control component. So being able to have control over an area, if you've got that as a quest, is going to give you points. And so you're not quite sure at any one point in time what certain people are working towards. However, you can kind of work it out throughout their actions and also the cards that they draft at the beginning of the round. So the way this game works is that everyone is going to be drafting the cards that they want to use, where they take one and pass it around to the next player, take another one, and that's going to form your hand of cards to play. And these cards run the gamut of all of the different things you're going to do in this game. So there's going to be cards that are going to help you in battle. They're going to help you win, but in some cases you may not want to win battles, but that's a whole other thing. But they are going to help you give power to you in a battle. There are the upgrade cards that are going to help you upgrade elements of your clan. There are monster cards that are going to help you recruit the help of these monsters that have these amazing abilities that you're going to be able to use out in the game. And then there are also the quest cards, which are going to give you those objectives that you want to work towards that can be worth a lot of points. And straight away, the tension is, what is my strategy this round? And what do I want to draft out of here? And if I don't draft that monster out of this hand of cards, I'm about to pass it to Maggie, who probably will take that monster. And if she takes that monster, then what's the implications of that on the thing that I'm trying to do that round? Because now I know it's in the game. It's going to be in the game in this round. Someone's going to use it. And how does that change how I'm going to mitigate against the risk of that? And that is something I really love about this game, is that there is this ability to plan as much as you can from a strategy perspective as you draft those cards. You are thinking about what you want to achieve. You're like, okay, I'm going to take that quest, which means that I need to maybe, move some more people in and do this and do that. You're trying to balance that with the amount of rage that you have, because rage in this game is like the currency that's going to allow you to get things done. Once you're out of rage, you're out of actions, basically. So you keep playing until everybody has run out of rage. And so you're thinking about your strategy, but then the way that the game works, it's so highly interactive that if someone does something that you weren't expecting, like moving all of their pieces into an area that you thought you would have control of, you very quickly have to change tact. And then you're going to have to think tactically about like, oh, well, I was going to do this, but now
back up now.
Yeah, now it's like, well, I guess I'll try and put all my energy into getting rid of them, or whatever the case may be, or maybe I'll move into somewhere else and just take a completely different approach. And so I really enjoy that element of both feeling like you're working towards a strategy, but then also just having to react to other people in this highly interactive experience. And area control is really interactive. The battle, when I first saw this game, of course, we looked at this and we're like,
no,
that is not going to be a game for us. No way. Like, we love Euros. This is not a game for us. In playing this game, it plays very much like a Euro. If you were to replace all of the characters in here with wooden discs and a map that looked like somewhere in Europe, you would feel like you were playing a Euro. Like, it is very
well, except
Euro-esque.
for the battle, because you don't really tend to battle in a Euro.
No.
You know, but even the battle
is fairly straightforward. It's never devastating. You can kind of feel that it's coming. You can prepare for it, and if you don't prepare for it, well, then you didn't prepare for it.
But also sometimes it's something that you're welcoming, because your objective might actually be to like send people off to Valhalla, and that's one thing that I appreciate about that.
And I also really like about this game that on your turn you're only taking one action at a time. So there's this trade-off of the timing of like, well, I need to bank this objective, but do I first want to move and take that territory, or like get that benefit from moving in there first to try and pick up the relic, I think they're called. So you know, there's a lot of different things that are going on in this game, and the variation in the cards that come out are going to dictate what you can get done, but it's dictating what everybody can get done, and everyone's having to make that trade-off at the start of the round. So I really love this game. I really, really love this game. In fact, it doesn't hit the table as much as I would like it to. But yeah, if you watch the channel for a while, you know that I love area control. It's just and because I love high player interaction, but I also don't like games that have a lot of luck, and I don't like battles with dice rolls and that type of thing. And so this game for me is like that perfect blend of like enough theme and enough it's very Euros, a lot of ways to mitigate, and it's kind of open information in a way, because yes, I don't know who has those cards, but I know that they're there.
They're somewhere.
Someone
has them.
And someone's going to get that, and if someone plays that, like, well, then have I prepared myself enough for that?
Yeah. For me, I think surprisingly, even though the theme is not something that I'm attracted to, like spending rage to like control areas and things, I surprisingly end up having quite a nice time when I play this game, because I think almost like I can sort of tune off from the theme, and it's more really about that the card playing, like what are the upgrades that I can do, and what are the things that I can move around. And I often find myself taking the objectives, or doing the whole looking forward to Valhalla type event. And so I find that there's enough variation and enough of the machinations to keep my mind engaged and stimulated, even though that thematically, and I'll usually try and kind of like shy away. I don't enjoy the combat or the battles, but having that option of like, well, if I
enjoy them, I feel like you instigate a lot of them. For someone who doesn't enjoy them, I have had many a game devastated by Maggie moving in like a monster, and some people when I wasn't expecting it.
Begrudgingly. I'm going to say I do that begrudgingly.
Okay. But you do it very well, so. I've had many games where I was just like, you just destroyed all of my plans for this round. And
sometimes it can be like one fulminating like blow.
Yeah, it really can. It can feel devastating, but it's also for that reason, I didn't prepare myself well enough for what I knew Maggie was capable of with the arsenal that she had. I did not prepare myself well enough for that round. And so I end up blaming not the game, but myself for that. And also it creates like a really fun atmosphere around the table as well. Like the battle is just enough that it's like, no, if you do, like you've just, I had so many good plans, and I could have won if you hadn't done that. I love that. It's like,
but I like that the battle is not the main focus. It's not like a battling sort of game all the time, all day, every day. So.
That's interesting. I find it like not so much about the battles, but it definitely is about keeping an eye on your opponent and making sure that you're prepared for full battle, because there are so many, like it's so focused on that area control and ensuring that you have all your ducks in a row when you're going to score those quest cards. I just, I don't know. Okay, let's go to my score, because my score for this game is, and I think this is going to surprise a lot of people, 9.2. This is a game that I absolutely love. And I was thinking about, wow, like that's, when I was thinking about my rating, I was like, there's not an element of this game that I could change to make it feel better. And every time I play it, I just really enjoy it. It's not a game that I'll play repeatedly, and like it's all I want to play. But every time I sit down to a game of this, I just am in admiration of the design of the game. I think everything works together so beautifully. It creates a lot of fun. It's highly interactive, and I always feel like I was just one step away from winning. And if you hadn't have done that, then I would have been great and fine. So yeah, I don't know. I really love it. Obviously, I painted the game as well, and so that adds an emotional connection to the game as well. I enjoy like playing with games that I've painted. But yeah, I just really think it's a fantastic game.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think it's a really, really solid design. It's an 8 for me. So I think I always am surprised for the type of theme that it is, how much I actually enjoy when I play it. And I think it's because, again, it's sort of a testament to like all the different things that are at play in it, all the different elements that you can focus on, and all the different, like that it's not like, again, for me, it's not just about like, I'm going to battle, I'm going to destroy, like there's just so much else. Like there's so many other ways of getting points, and so it's
a fabulous game.
Blood Rage.
That is Blood Rage. If you do love this game, please drop a comment. Even if you don't, drop a comment as well. Like, why don't you love that game? I would love to know. But you can tell already that's probably going to be quite high up in my rankings overall. I really do love and appreciate that design of Blood Rage. Anyway, I'll stop talking about Blood Rage. And, this is another long video. So if you got to the end of it, well done. I hope you're still enjoying these ratings.
Yeah.
We're really enjoying doing this series, and it's really nice to go back through our collection and to reflect on these games, to get them back to the table and be like, this is a great game, and it's still a great game because we play a lot of hotness games, and this game still stands the test of time. So we're trying to do a mix of old and new, of things that Maggie loves and the things that I love, and I hope you're enjoying the series. Please, if you are enjoying, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.